anyone who might have missed today's session. But yeah, so I think the structure that I normally follow is that while presenting, if you do have a question, you can just raise your hand and we can attend to your question. I think it's better to just ask some of the questions while we're still at that area instead of us going back. But if there are instances where the question does come towards the end, I think that is also still fine. We can always go back. Please, guys, make sure that you are muted. Right. Cool. I think some of you might be new here, but I think someone is not muted. I'm not sure who it is. I think that's why I'm getting a bit of an echo. Okay, so some of you might not be new. I think some of you might already know me from, I think, TikTok and stuff like that. But yeah, my name is Clarence Mandia. I'm the founder of Witle Academy. So we are a data and AI academy. We basically teach data and AI related skills. That's what we specialize in. And I think today's session is basically a portion of our CSI work, which is Career Support Initiative. We sort of did extend it to a few people because I think a lot of people can actually benefit in how you build your GitHub portfolio, right? So in today's session, I'll be taking you through what is really important for you as you're building your GitHub portfolio and what are some of the things that you should be paying attention to. Because I think we get caught up in just building the projects, but when it comes to marketing ourselves in terms of what we have built and the skills that we would have learned in the process, I think that's where a lot of people normally struggle. And when you think about it, if a recruiter is going to look at your GitHub portfolio, they're not going to spend time reading your code and all of that. They want to know what problem you actually solved and how you went about solving that particular problem. So in today's session is hopefully to get everyone to that point where you are able to document your GitHub portfolio well. I think we're not going to focus on the technical aspect of writing code and all of that, but what we will focus on is how can you build your portfolio in a way that actually makes it easy for anyone else to actually be able to read that information. So that's what we will be focusing on today's session, right? So hopefully we can finish this on time, but if it does require us to go further, I think that's also fine, right? Cool. If there's no questions, I will get started with the program. Okay, great. No questions. I think we can get going, right? Cool. So I think just to get into it without wasting any time. So I think there might be some people that might not be familiar with GitHub. We will go through the demo. I think don't worry about that one. There will be a part where we go through the demo, but GitHub is a great platform. I think a lot of people in the IT community honestly use GitHub quite a lot. You know, it's a really important tool. I think most people normally use it for managing code and just making sure that your code is stored safe. It really is an amazing platform, right? So GitHub is a platform where developers store, share, and collaborate on their code, right? Think of it as a portfolio plus resume, proof of work, and all of that. Because it's a platform that can already house code, what then started happening is that people started to use this as a way to actually display some of the projects that they'd actually worked on in public, right? You can actually make it publicly available so that, you know, more people will be able to get access to what you've built and all of that. So that's why GitHub became very popular for showcasing your skills and all those other things. Please make sure that you mute, guys. Otherwise, I'm just gonna mute everyone. This will mute everyone in the meeting, but you. I've just muted everyone in the meeting. Right, cool. So it's a great platform, honestly, to showcase your skills, right? And that's why it became really popular for most professionals to actually use it. So I think it's not only what's important is that GitHub is not only used for showcasing your skills. in corporate settings, this is what is used to manage code, store code, and all of that. It is used quite a lot in the corporate setting. So it is a tool that, some of you might already be using if you're already working in corporate. But it's used for a very different purpose if you're working in a corporate setting, just for storing and managing code, and just having a chill record, not necessarily to display your, let's say, your skills and all of that. But I think for our sort of case, I think it would be great to actually use it for that. Now, why does it matter for you to actually have a GitHub portfolio, right? So the first thing, it proves, because one of the first challenges that recruiters often face, you get someone uses an AI tools or use Claude or ChatGPT, you write this amazing CV, you can do one, two. Anyone can say they can build whatever, and all of a sudden you actually start to believe, oh, maybe this person is the best candidate. But once you start doing interviews, only to realize that this person lied to you, they do not know how to use Power BI, they do not know how to use Databricks, they have no clue about any of the tools that they actually mentioned. So one of the first things that GitHub allows companies to actually verify is that you can actually build the things that you're talking about. You're not just claiming that you've got the knowledge, but you have the capabilities to actually build that which you are actually talking about. So, well, that's one of the first key things, right? The second thing, recruiter magnet. Look, hiring managers will always check this, right? I think normally they would refer this to the technical people, but just a short, which is why having a description is very important, because someone who's reading your GitHub might be someone who's not technical, but if you have a nice description of what exactly you did in that project, it is actually going to make it very easy for that person to be able to understand what you did, right? It's also a good way to learn in public, right? So every commit is a track of your growth and stuff. Like if you are learning something or you're working on a project, GitHub allows you to sort of be able to display this to the public. Anyone can literally go and see what you're working on every single day, the commitment and the time it actually took you. So it's really is great for those kind of things, right? It also stands out instantly, right? A lot of applicants would just like, if someone were to send me their CV applying for a data analyst role, and I see all these amazing things that they're actually talking about, in my mind, honestly, anyone can write a great CV, right? But I want to say, what have you done before? If I'm in the education space, have you done any projects that actually relate to my industry? That's what I would be looking for, right? If maybe you've got some data skills, but all of your projects maybe are in finance, and we don't necessarily have a need for anyone who has got finance skills, or someone who has done something outside of our way, but then there's someone else who's actually worked in an education company and they've done some work around that, and they have a project that I can actually go through to verify what they did. And if the activities that they did are pretty much similar to what we are doing at my company, I'm more likely to choose that person, right? So it really helps recruiters really understand what you can do, because a lot of CVs these days, anyone can write a good CV. I think that's the very basic, right? The very basic is being able to write a good CV. But the next step, honestly, is being able to add those projects so that companies can actually see. I think before we get into the detail, what's important is that in your CV, obviously, if you attach a link to your GitHub portfolio, what I would recommend is that write a very short summary, 2 lines summarizing the project, and then add the link to say if someone wants to read more about it, then they can click on the link and see much more detail. So just write a 2-line description about that project so that someone gets excited to go and read that. Because if you just add a link, I'm going to be like, okay, what project is this? And I might not even have time to read about it. But if you say something, a keyword that I'm actually looking for, I think it makes it much more easy for someone to be enticed to actually go and read your GitHub portfolio, right? Very important. So hopefully everyone understands the importance of actually having a GitHub portfolio. It really does help you quite a lot. Hopefully everyone can actually hear me. Right. My slide is not moving. Okay, cool. I think now the question is, we now all agree that GitHub is really important for us, right? We all see the value in having a GitHub portfolio. But now the question is, what are those things that these recruiters are looking for? What are those things that the hiring managers are looking for? What are the things that I would look for if I was also hiring someone who is a data professional, right? There's a couple of things, and these are the basics that you need to get right. If you miss some of this, honestly, you might not have the best sort of portfolio, right? So the first question that's really important is, what problem did I solve? Look, you could be building any sort of project, right? If it's not really clear what challenge you were actually solving, it doesn't make sense to anyone. What is going on? Like the first thing I want to know is what is going on? What is the problem? And what were you actually solving in this project? That is the very first thing. If you've got a portfolio where you've just attached links and there's nothing speaking about the problem that you were solving, you need to fix that. Very first thing, what problem did I solve? So write down the problem that you solved. Second thing is, what tools and skills did I use? Think about it. When a company hires you, a company would hire you to actually do data analysis, data science on the tools that they are already using, right? It's rare that a company hires and they're like, you can use any tool that you want. Companies normally need to commit to certain licenses. They normally need to buy certain tools and all of that. So they need to see, did you use tools that are relevant to what they're doing? Like if we use Power BI, we are more likely to choose someone who's actually used Power BI in their project portfolio. If we're using Tableau, we're more likely to go for someone who actually uses the tool, right? If we're using Databricks, we want to see someone who's actually used Databricks. So it's really important for you to list out the tools and the skills that you actually applied. Because if I'm looking for someone who's good at data modeling and the project that you're actually doing includes data modeling, for me, that's a win because I'm getting someone who has done what we're actually looking for as a business. So I see a lot of people, they just do these projects and you do not list out the tools that you use and the skills that you actually applied. And that is really, really important because that is exactly what recruiters are looking for. You might have stated it in your CV, but I want to see how those skills were applied as you were actually doing the project itself. So very important, if you've got a GitHub portfolio and you have not listed the tools and the skills, something is definitely missing, right? Point number three, this is another one that people often miss quite a lot. Like, how did you approach this, right? Because companies want to see your mindset. What's your approach in solving problems? How did you walk us through? Did you start by cleaning the data? How did you invest? How did you even get into the point of understanding what was the issue? How did you even identify messy data? What techniques and what approaches did you actually use? That is really important for organizations to see how good you are or how far you can actually do. You know, it's really important to highlight your methodology, approach, and all of that. Now, the other thing is your code. Like, okay, it's great. You're talking about all these things. This is how you did it. Use Power BI, use this. But where is the code? Where is the evidence for me to see that you've actually written this, right? That's also another thing that's really important. I need to be able to see the evidence. I need to see what exactly you actually used in order for you to build this solution. So this is where you upload. You need to attach your scripts, notebooks, queries, and everything. You can even attach links and all of that. That's also important. But often people just skip the code. And you've told me a really great story. Anyone can tell me a really great story, but where is the code that actually supports exactly what you've actually spoken about? Because I might be interested to see what's your style of writing. I might be interested to see, did you use subqueries? Did you use CTEs? You know, what sort of SQL scripts did you actually write? For me, those would be the things that are important. So if you are already missing these things, like your GitHub portfolio is probably not as well structured as you want to, right? But the last point is, what was the outcome, right? It's great. There was a very big problem and all of that. But my question then to you is, with that problem, what did you realize? What actually did you solve in the process of you actually building this? So what is the outcome? Quantify the impact, share the insights, really explain what did you draw from that. I think that's something that's also really, really important. So in essence, if there's anything that, if there's a list that you must tick as you're building your GitHub portfolio, I need to see all of this. And not just me, but if you think about it, anyone who is hiring would appreciate if all of those things could actually be answered. Those are, I would say, those are the key things that you must ensure that you have in your GitHub portfolio. Yes, I see there's a hand. Yes, you can speak.
Jason,
Yes,
can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you.
Oh, you stated that the code must be available and visible.
Yes.
So as a varsity student, I realized that for some projects which we are given, some students go to GitHub to actually look for those solutions, and they might take someone else's that um, have an effect in terms of I can say I did this using someone else's work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. I think those are some of the challenges, right? Some people can actually steal someone else's work. And with regards to university projects, right, I think it's always good to just inquire with your university how comfortable, because I think some of these universities have certain rules that maybe you cannot make their work publicly available. Maybe they've got ownership to the work. I think just inquire about that and understand what are the requirements. Sometimes they might not allow you to do it. But yeah, like there is a risk that, some people can just go to your GitHub portfolio and start copying things. I think those things actually do happen. But the projects that I would say list out, it's projects that you've done, maybe that are not sensitive, like you don't mind anyone else seeing that code. It's really for you to just showcase your skills. I would say those are the kind of projects that you can make publicly available with the permission. If your institution does allow, then you can make them available.
Oh, okay. But I was saying in terms of my portfolio, being I'm comfortable with it that I write and like someone else can just take publish it as he, and then
Yeah.
he might get a job or something.
Yeah, I think it actually does happen quite a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone with questions? Okay, great. I will share the slides. I'll see how I can share these slides. If you received this invitation via email, I think I'll just send via email. But if you received it via WhatsApp, I'll just make sure that I send to everyone who is attending today, right? So, but in essence, if you can take out these things, that's really going to be important. So that someone else understands. And you'll see that majority of the really good GitHub portfolios, they've actually followed the very same structure. So we will go through some demo examples. Okay. I think this is pretty much going to be some sort of repetition. So what are recruiters looking for? A clear README on every repo, real world data set, not just the Titanic. I think there's also been this trend, people you doing the very same projects, there's very simple projects, and companies do get frustrated sometimes if you're just building these random projects that do not make sense. I think fundamentally there is a challenge, honestly, in our space. I think overall in IT, there is the challenge of people not knowing what projects to actually build. I think that's the fundamental challenge. But there is some people working towards solving these problems. But yeah, I think for now there's really limited platforms where we can get projects and stuff like that. But yeah, I think even us, we are trying to figure out a way on how we can solve this problem and hopefully get more people to be able to practice their skills. Because that's the other thing. It's one thing to learn the skills, but it's another to actually have a platform where you can actually constantly practice and see how you can actually upskill. So we are also working on something in that space. But I think these are some of the things that are really important. Just make sure that you work on projects that are much more difficult to some extent. Don't just work on very simple projects that might not even stand, because the kind of projects that you work on really do matter. If you're applying for a bank, try to work on banking data set. Try to get as much difficult data as much as you can and apply to the industry. That's one thing that I would say is really important for these companies, honestly, at the end of the day, right? So what does a good README document actually look like? I think if you're not familiar with the README document, don't worry. When we go to the demo, you will actually see what a README document actually looks like. So do not worry about that. But in essence, a README document is where you really outline what you are actually working on, right? So there's a couple of things that are important, and this basically highlights the structure. So firstly, indicate the title of the project that you like. What project are you working on? Because I think that's the first thing. When someone goes to your project, they want to see, okay, cool. What is this project about? Don't just say project 1, 2, and 3 and start. It doesn't make sense to people, right? Have an overview, because someone might not have the time to go through the detail, but I can scan through your title and maybe your overview, right? And maybe for me, I'm not technical. I'm just an HR person. I want to see what you've worked on before I send your CV to the managing to the IT team and stuff like that. If you've got a project title and an overview, that's great for me because I already know. And include your data sets, what data sets you actually use, the tools that you actually use, key findings. Did you find any insights? What was interesting that you actually found in that? And then the other thing that's also important is, how do I also re-perform the very same thing that you've done? I think that's another thing that you can actually add. It does make it easy for the recruiters to also see what you've also done in the step-by-step that you've actually sort of followed, right? Yeah, so there's also a couple of structures. I think this is just highlighting that you've got your data, you've got your notebooks, you've got your scripts, you've got your outputs, then you've got your README file requirements and stuff like that. I think that's sort of like the typical structure of a great project, but you guys will see this better in the demo, right? So I think there's other very important things. So on your README file, you need to have an introduction. You need to feature your projects. Your contact information is also very important. Like, let's say someone wants to reach out to you, they really like the project that you worked on. Some people actually get hired from GitHub. Like, literally, if I go to a GitHub platform like, yo, this is really good and this is exactly what I need right now, you can just contact the person from there, right? So they are people that have gotten hired from their GitHub portfolios, like literally, because it was public and anyone could just go and see that someone was really interested about what they actually did. And they actually got a job from that, which is really quite interesting, right? Like I say, it's skills and tools and stuff like that. Please make sure that all of that is available. I think those are some of the things. So some of the mistakes or things that I'll say you must ignore. A README file is very important, guys. Do not skip your README file. You need to have a README file because that is where you write the outline of your project. You do everything on your README file. That's where you put all the details about what the project is all about, right? Do not include vague project description. Like, companies want something on the point, right? You were doing a vendor account analysis, something like that. You were Be very specific to what you're doing, because if someone sees something vague, they might, maybe this person is not the best candidate. They're doing some random projects. You're underselling yourself. So you really need to figure out ways to sell yourself as much as you can. There's so much that you can say, but think about what is important to capture the people that are going to be reviewing that, right? Don't just do tutorial type of projects. There's the tutorial type of projects, like a very small project that do not look at a very broad problem. I think that's what they normally refer to as tutorial projects. When we say projects, I'm talking about something that is a specific business problem, right? Where you move from querying data, cleaning data, building a dashboard, and also answering very specific business problems. That is what companies want, not some tutorial that you just cleaned some random data and that was it. They want to see something at a larger scale, at a business level, because if you get hired, you're not going to be doing exercises. You're going to be doing full-blown projects. So that's another thing. Avoid these very small projects, honestly. They're not going to help you in any way, right? You need end-to-end projects. I think they call them capstone projects, right? The other thing that's important, do not have empty or abandoned repos. I think it's very important. It just makes your page very messy, honestly. I think it's really important to make sure that you've got everything that someone might need. All right, cool. So let's see. I think this is actually the end. All right. So I think the first thing that I think is really important for us, I'm not sure how many people have got their GitHub accounts. If you've never created one, I think it'll be a good time to actually create it. But if you feel like you want to do it after the session, I think that's also fine. You can actually do it after the session. But I think now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to GitHub and I will show you guys an example of a good sort of GitHub portfolio. It's a dummy example that I built. Let me see if I can switch over screens. In the meantime, are there any questions at all so far? Screen is way too messy. Any questions? Well, I hope my GitHub portfolio did not disappear. Okay, hectic. I'm experiencing some technical issues. Okay. Yes, I see there's a hand up.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Clarence, I wanted to ask, you mentioned that we should use sort of real data, right? Not the ones like I think I saw Titanic or something. Are we able to tell the difference whether this is real life data or what?
I think, yeah, like I was saying, there is a challenge in our space, right? Because I think the one platform where you can find really good data, I would say it's GitHub, not GitHub, sorry, Kaggle, right? So I think what they normally say is avoid using maybe real life data could be very difficult because it's hard to find, real life data. I think try to use data that is as real as possible to the real world because some data might either be too clean or too small because in an organization you might be working with much larger data than just 10 records. I think maybe that would be a better way of putting it. Yes, I see there's another hand.
Quickly, sir, can I quickly ask, regarding the data?
Yeah.
So from how
I think I'm not able to hear you anymore.
can you
Yes, I can hear you now.
see the location of where the data was compiled? Because from my experience when I was like I was the red cover, I found data from US, foreign countries. So
Yeah.
that matters, or the thing that matters is how you perform uh, anything to the data, what the results from the
Okay. I do hear some of the words that you say, but some of them, I don't know, I just lose them. Um, I'm not sure if it's the sound, but I hear you were speaking about data from foreign countries, right? Okay, I'm not able to hear you now. Okay, but you can either type, that's also fine.
Asking if like the data, the location of where it was created, does it matter?
Okay, the location where you got the data. I think what matters for companies is relevance, right? I think, like I said, if you're working on non-health related data, but you're applying for a health company, that's also an issue. But I don't think the location of your data should really matter as much, as long as you're solving a specific problem that could be relevant. Because I think the data could be different across these entities, but the problem or the what you're solving could be applied across. I think that should be fine.
Because I've had a problem of finding data from the US and so forth.
Yeah, I think it can be really difficult to find data in South Africa, honestly. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, good evening. On my side, I want to ask, while we're still on the data chat, like, will it be a problem if I go to maybe ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to generate the data for me?
Yeah, I think those are some of the alternatives that people currently have. For practice purposes, I think that's some of the things that you can actually do to get yourself more practice. Yeah.
Okay, so it will be a problem like if maybe I'm thinking of an idea to do a project for this kind of data, but I cannot get it anywhere. So I go to AI, then I ask, I write a prompt to ask for to generate the data. Will it be a problem?
I think as long as you create data that is as real as possible, when I say real, I mean the data is very large. It has got real life problems, not simplified data that is very clean. As long as you sort of mimic that kind of reality that we would face in the real world of getting very messy data, I think that should be fine.
Or as long as it's like close to real, it's fine.
Yes, as long as it's close to reality, because even data scientists, sometimes we do use synthetic data, right? Synthetic, because unfortunately, some models, we do not have data to train them. So they sort of create synthetic data that is as close as possible to the real world, just to build those machine learning models. So it is a problem that everyone in the world faces, this data shortage for practice or even application.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So now I'm going to take you guys through an example that I created a few minutes ago. Hopefully this could solidify the understanding of what kind of, hopefully everyone can see my screen. Can anyone confirm that they are able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, let me just move this here. Okay, now I want you guys to think about what we've learned so far, in some of the things, and you will start to see them being applied over here. And like I say, the main purpose for this session is for me to show you the structure of building a GitHub portfolio, right? So as you can see, this is an example, right? I've uploaded my data here. It's in this folder. So all the data that I have is actually sitting over here. And then all the documents, the assignment documents and every other thing that is needed, I've uploaded over here. If you did a presentation, you can also upload the presentation here. Images, if you took screenshots of your dashboards or your data, you can actually upload all of that over here, because this would be very useful for you in future as you start building your GitHub portfolio, right? So, but I think for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to, let me just do this and get my other screen, right? Because I think for some people, it might be the first time you've built a GitHub portfolio. Let me just do this. Yeah, got the screen ready. I think my screen can be back now. Okay, cool. So I think the first thing is how do we get to this page over here, right? I think that is the first thing to say. How do I build this? So the first thing you need to do is you need to create a new repository where you'll be uploading all of this code. So normally it's just going to be at the top here. So this is basically interface. This would be your home page with all the repositories over here. And you can also see some of the trending repositories. So these are some of the trend. You can actually have a look at them. I think the more time you spend looking at other repositories, I think the more you learn about how to also build yours. That's also one of the recommendations I would give everyone, right? So I'm going to say new repository. The moment you say new, it's going to ask you, so you can even switch between your profiles. We got one profile, that's also fine. So you need to give a repository a name. Try to make it descriptive, right? I'm just going, because this is a test, I'm just going to say test. I'm allowed to say test because just for demonstration. Right, then you can do a very short description, right? Nothing hectic, this is the description that they were speaking about. So if I say demo GitHub for students, there we go. Now, you need to choose visibility. You can either make it private or public. If it's your own personal project you're working on, you want to make it private, right? But if you want it to be publicly available for anyone to be able, because think about it, if you're going to include this link on your CV, someone else needs to be able to click on this and be able to sort of work on it. Not really work on it, but be able to see your project, right? So you want to make it public, all right? Then very important, just ignore this. Honestly, I never use this. I'm not sure if there's anyone who actually uses sort of these templates, but I rarely ever use them, right? And you need to add the README. Now, remember, we're speaking about the README. It's really, really important. It's normally turned off. You want to turn it on because if you create a repository without the README, yeah, it might be very tricky. You would need to still edit again. I find it much more easier to just edit at this point when you're creating a repository. Licensing, I think this one, I think for now, let's just leave it. We can leave licensing. But this is when you explain how others can use your code. You remember that whole thing where you're making it public and you're not comfortable? Certain people accessing your data and whatever. So this is where you explain, but most cases people don't even respect this. They just use however they want it. But this is where we just explain how you want people to be able to use your GitHub repository. But once you've done this very basic setup, we haven't done anything hectic. And I'm just going to say create. Right, so there we go. We've got our GitHub repository over here. You see test one, it's actually the name of the project. So you want to make this a very descriptive name. Demo GitHub for students, this is slightly like the description, right? So a couple of things that you need to know, because you guys can see here, it's empty. But when you look at this one, it's very detailed. We've got folders over here. We've got images, we've got headings, we've got how do we actually do this? I think that's the next question that most people would normally have, right? So you are able to add images, right? And everything. All you need to do, you can say, add a file. If you click here, you can either create one or you can either upload one, right? So normally you just want to upload because you've got existing files sitting in your folder. And if you say upload files, then it will take you to this place over here. Now, this is the important part. You can either go, if you've got two screens, I think you can go to your other screen and you can drag and drop your files over here, especially if you want to upload, because normally GitHub, I think it's a struggle to upload a folder, right? If I say choose files, so you can see that if I maybe say this, right? And the data, I'm not able to import this folder as it is. So it doesn't allow you to import folders, but you can import files. But if you want to import folders, what I'd recommend is that have a second screen on the side, and then you hold that folder, then you drag it all the way to this point, right? I'm going to see if I'm able to do it on the side, but you guys probably won't be able to see my screen. I'm going to drag the doc. So if I drag the document, then you just put it over here, then it actually loads that information, right? If you want to upload folders, you have to drag and drop them. Otherwise, uploading it manually wouldn't actually work in that. So that's how, if most people upload folders, I've gotten questions on how do you actually upload folders. So that is how you actually upload the folder, right? Very important. Once you've done it, I think best practice, you want to add comments on what you did. Like you can say, I added data. I think it's really good for tracking what changes you made. And then once you're happy with that, you can say commit. We're not going to go into the detail of committing to directory, committing to branch. We're just going to do the very basic, right? So now you can see that we've got our GitHub portfolio over here. There we go. Well, we've got our docs over here. So that's how you actually upload a file or a folder, right? Now, the other aspect is to say, how do I make this good looking thing over here? You need to go to the editing button. So if you go to edit, right, you are able to make changes. So this you can change and all of this you can change, right? But what we're going to do, we're going to stick more to this one because I think this one is already done portfolio, and it would be a good place for us to see. Sorry, guys, I just want to bring in something else. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and bring that other one. That's going to be quite helpful for everyone. Yeah, there we go. All right. I think we're back. Okay, so now maybe let's go through this project and understand how it's been done, and we'll go into the detail on how they actually did it. So firstly, you can see this is Nova Retail Group Sales Analysis. So very descriptive, straight to the point. I already understand they're probably doing some analysis on sales related data, right? Cool. So then there's a description, an end-to-end retail analytics ERD. Okay, ERD. So this person designed an ERD diagram, enters relationship diagram, SQL data warehouse, Power BI dashboards. I already know what was actually done, right? Both for a fictional, like I just said fictional, both for a fictional South African retail group track revenue performance and store operations over 10 stores in 5 provinces, right? You've given me perspective what is happening. Like you've told me what we're working with and stuff like that. And on top of that, this person actually added the overview. So now there's already an overview of the data set. Okay, I can already see revenues being, there's a lot of revenue made in Gauteng, Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape, Free State and stuff like that. So there's really is a lot happening here. And I can already see which products are actually giving us more money. So you're already giving an executive summary for someone to see what exactly you're working on, right? Cool. The next thing, you've got the table of contents over here. Table of contents shows what is the problem, what I built, tools and skills, data sets, quality issues, how to run this project. So if I'm interested in something very specific, I can go to say, okay, where is the data set? I click on data set, right? It might take me to, okay, it's not, it's supposed to, okay, there we go. So if you click on that, it should actually take you to the section that speaks to the data set itself. You can see that this is the data set, a full live, and I've actually referenced, you see this? If someone clicks on this, it takes you, I hope this works. It takes you to the data set itself. So you see now I'm on the data view and I'm able to view the data and everything. And I've also included a README file specifically to the data that will also give more information about the data set itself. Now, this is a well-documented and well-structured sort of GitHub portfolio, right? So that's really, really important. So even everything should actually be linked. Like everything over here is linked to something. So if I go to tools, it takes me to the tools, right? If there's any detail I need to know about the tools, then I can go to that. So you can see this is a very structured. There's what is the problem statement? What did I build? The tools that I used, the data sets and tables. There's also summary insights on the tables and all of that, right? Data quality issues, how to run this project, there's all of that information, and all this is already here. And the file structure, if someone is going through this, they already know, okay, cool, there's a README, licensing, the data is here, there's a list of data sets, SQL and all of that. The data model is here. This is the data model that I'm actually working on. I've actually worked on a data model. Why the star schema? You're explaining why you use the specific star schema. If someone wanted to see full details, you've attached this. If someone clicks on this, it takes them to that very place where they need to, right? This is very organized. The dashboard executive summary built for the CFO. You can see the insights. I think this is similar to the one that we saw at the top. Designed to answer. You also explain what is this actually answering, right? Product performance and stuff like that. You are literally listing out what were the key findings? What did you learn? Referencing. So you reference everything. What did you use text formulas from what Microsoft, Power BI, reference all the things that you actually used, right? It's really good practice for you to reference important information. Now, about yourself, obviously, if I like this portfolio, I want to know who's this person who built this amazing thing, right? So I might actually go to your portfolio. If you've got a website, great. If you've got a LinkedIn, just add your LinkedIn. I might be interested to see who you are. You're on LinkedIn. What other things do you actually do? Do you have a YouTube channel? Actually, companies love to know that you've got YouTube channels. They can actually go and see your skills. I've got a friend who actually got hired by some other company, and what they were asking is like, what is he doing on his YouTube channel? And it really helped him quite a lot. So if you're doing anything like that, put it out there. It's really great for companies to know what you're actually doing in the market. Your email address, if we want to get hold of you, this is how we can actually get in contact with you. Now, you guys can see there's really fancy things that are listed here. We've got links, we've got these border lines, we've got headings, like all of this is actually written differently. Now, if I do this, I'm going to click on edit here so that you guys can see how these things work. Now, if you go to the editing mode, this is where you normally edit your README document. Can you see that for me to showcase that image, this is how I did it. I said you need to put this exclamation mark executive dashboard. This would be the name of the dashboard. And then you will call images. Images is the folder name. Look at this. You call images folder name and then / dashboard, which is basically this dashboard over here. So this is how you create this hyperlink. If you go to the preview, you guys can actually see that. Where is that executive? I've lost. So you can see that this image over here is called the executive whatever image, and it was actually made possible by doing this. This is how you make it possible. And if you look at the table of contents, you write the problem. If you look at the topics over here, it's problem, what is built, tools used. How does someone actually make it possible for me to click on this and go to this? This is how they actually do it. They say the problem, and then they write this. So this would actually take me to this. So those are some of the tricks that you can actually use to do all of that referencing. And even documents, so you can see that full data sets, you just do this to make the name of the data set, and then you can highlight this, and then you actually then create the source for your data, and this is how you actually build it, right? So even with the headings, you can see that there's different ways of showing the headings. I know this is quite a lot, but the nice thing is that you don't have to memorize any of this, right? There's a platform, there's a website. It's called the Markdown features, right? So this is where we get all of those things that we need to make our design look good, right? Because some people will ask themselves, how do we get all of these headings, all these headings? How do I show images, and how do I add links and all of that? All of those answers are sitting over here, right? So if you look at the first one, if you add one hash, it's the H1 heading, 2 is the H2, 3. And what this also does, it shows you a preview. So H1 looks like this, H2 looks like this. So if you wanted to write a heading like that, you can also see, if I go back here and go to the editing mode, there's different hashes that are being used. Very important. This is how you do it. But very important, you want to make sure that there's spacing in between. But this platform shows you everything. And if I go down further, if you wanted to create a list, this is how you create a list, right? So one gives you this order. So it literally shows you. And the nice thing is that it even shows you how it, so this is how you type it out. This is how it would actually look like. So this is how you can create lists. If you wanted to embed links, this is how you do it. So you do it like this, and this is how your links actually appear, right? So everything is literally here. If you're wondering how people make all of those markdowns look great, this is where they actually get all of that. Now, images, if you want to add images, this is how you do it, right? Here's how you can add your hover to see the title over here. Inline, you do this very important exclamation mark, you open the brackets, and then you add your link over here, and someone can actually see. So there's all these different techniques that you can actually use. And if you're wondering where do we actually get this, it's all here. You can just go and see. If you want to add your code, this is how you add your code. If you want to add footnotes, if you want something that looks like this, it's all over here. And tables, the instructions are all over here. And this is how your table would look like. If you wanted something to do with block spaces or whatever, you do this block spaces, inline HTML, everything literally is here. So this link actually takes you to all the things, all the formats, because that's what most people normally ask themselves, like, how do we add images? How do I make an image stand out? How do I embed all of those things? It's actually used in, it's actually referenced in the Markdown cheat sheet. That's what we basically use. I know the session was supposed to be 45 minutes, sort of rushing just to make sure that, I think some people are already dropping off the call. But in essence, hopefully this does add a bit more value into how you build a GitHub portfolio and where do you get all of those things to make your images visible and stuff like that. Honestly, there's no rocket science here. I think everything here is pretty much straightforward, but I think this is how you can get started building your GitHub portfolio. Yes, I see there's a hand up.
Possible for you then the link to this GitHub and you send
I can hear some of the words, but I couldn't hear some. We're saying there's another platform that one can use to also learn how to use GitHub.
No, I'm asking if it's possible for you to send the link to this GitHub
Or to get access to this one.
when you send this.
Yes, I will share this. I will share the links. Don't worry. I will share everything here. Cool. Any other questions? Yes.
Good day, everyone. I have a quick question, right? I've once prompted AI to actually like make me a README, right? And I realized that it included emojis. I don't know if you can see where it says the problem, the heading.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to know how do you actually get those, and like if would it be a better idea to actually just what you call tell AI what you have felt and allow it to make you read me, because I realized that those emojis are kind of hard to find, and even on the list that you just showed us right now, I didn't see any way it meant where it talked about how to add emojis and so on.
Yeah, so the emojis have to be embedded. If you look at this, how to run, the emoji was already here. I also got those emojis from AI, honestly. But I think some of you can, I don't know if there's places where you can add more emojis, but I feel like these are standard emojis that you can find. I'm not sure how do you get to emojis on your laptop, but you firstly need to it has to be specified before the hash. I think it's not something that comes as a feature from that. You actually need to write it down. So all the emojis that you see here, they're already typed before the hash, after the hashes. So you see all of them were typed. So you type them with the text that you're adding. I'm not sure if that helps.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's either You can also use AI to get some and then you just copy and paste them, or if your laptop is able to import additional, buy new emojis. I'm sure there's a way, honestly, to get new emojis, but I've never had to do it. But yeah, cool. This will also be live on our Whittle Academy YouTube. I'm also going to add the repos and everything, the links that will be used. I think even the link to the slides. But let me say by Monday, I don't want to commit anything by tomorrow. Let's say by Monday, it should be available on our YouTube channel. But yeah, so I think this is it for today, guys, and thank you so much for coming in numbers to attend and also asking the questions. Hopefully, this does add a bit more light to your GitHub portfolios and how you can actually build them. You guys have seen there's no rocket science here. It's very straightforward. It's really about telling the story about your GitHub repository so that more people actually understand what exactly you are building. So yeah, I will see you guys in class for some people that are in the data analytics class. Cool. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. Cheers. Yes, Anela, I see your hand is up. You can ask. Okay, is that an all end?